Last speaker before the lunch break is Marc Jones, who is here. Marc is the CTO of SoftLayer, and now IBM company. Yes, I'll give you the floor and I'll jump in with a bunch of stupid questions.
Stupid questions?
Yeah.
No, come on.
I love stupid questions.
We need better questions. Good morning, everybody. I know it's campus media and lunch, so get to the point here. This morning I talked about kind of this notion of borderless cloud, and now I'm going to take it a little bit further and talk about kind of this evolution of cloud and what's the next big thing. And again, I touched on some of this morning, and actually Megan from MongoDB touched on some of this as well. When we look at, I want to hone in specifically on the notion of big data and analytics and about these capabilities that are being built leveraging the cloud. So we look at cloud really from inception to really the last couple of years. It's been around foundation. When we look at foundation, it's been around kind of this core set of components or this toolkit, if you will, that you can use to build your own solutions to deploy your applications. And that's really been kind of the core focus of cloud. Everything else was kind of relegated to being a PaaS or a SaaS. I touched on that taxonomy this morning. But what we're seeing now from the next big thing is really this evolution of services. I like to look at them as intelligent services, of ways to expose computing power, intelligence, analytics capabilities directly to end users, whether that is the individual developer or all the way up through enterprises that are looking for a different way to do things. A couple highlights that I'd like to talk about. When we look at the platform, you know, I am obviously SoftLayer, IBM, we think about Watson, cognitive learning, machine learning, and taking the capabilities that we've developed over many years and exposing that as APIs, right? So initially it goes out to developers, and these developers can now consume these APIs and give them really incredibly processing power to analyze their own data, to take advantage of capabilities that wouldn't otherwise be accessible to them. And we see more and more of this happening to where it's less about just a pure play cloud from an infrastructure standpoint and more about these services. And these services ultimately become third-party services that become part of this broader cloud ecosystem. So we look at the number of startups that we have on our platform focused around machine learning is pretty staggering. And what they're able to do today, leveraging the underpinnings, the infrastructure of cloud, to produce these machine learning services that then get exposed to companies. And it may be a little bit more complex along the lines of APIs, but it could be really full-blown applications and services with incredibly easy-to-use interfaces that make it easier for small businesses, medium businesses, lines of business within enterprise to take advantage of that. We have one startup, Alien. They're based in Dublin, and they've developed a suite of machine learning algorithms. Everything from something as simple as uploading large bodies of data and being able to do data extraction. So what historically would be ETL, where you're having to use tool sets specifically to go in and you do a lot of the mappings yourself to transform your data. They have intelligence built into their platform that allows you to extract data out. So you may have large data sets and you specifically want to look for customer data or individual data, and it has intelligence to go do that. All the way through to social. And tying all of that together today from actionable data that you generate as a company to data that your customers are creating and publishing to social data, leveraging the cloud platform really is kind of one of the next big waves of cloud. And it's hard to pinpoint one area of evolution of the next big thing, because the scope and the breadth of cloud is expanding, what I feel like on a daily basis, much more beyond what I think we all thought cloud would be back in the early days of cloud. But the benefit of that is really to the end users, to the consumers. When you broaden your definition of cloud, and I'm at a point where I'm ready to kind of set cloud aside and just say this is the new way that companies consume, compute, and services. When you look at it that way and apply it to your business, the options are really endless at this point and really continue to advance. I'll pause there, Mark, and see if you have any questions you want to throw at me, or.
Historically, the software guys thought they had won the battles against the hardware guys, and that software was eating the world, and that all the value was moving from the hardware to the software. Recently, it seems that there is a coming back on the hardware, both at the device level and at the iron hardware level, with things like open computing. Are you following that, and what's your view on the balance of power at the two extreme? One, at the low end between the hardware and the software, what's happening, and is there a renewal on hardware innovation? And two, at the upper layer between the software and the cloud, and where do you see the boundary? How much do you push into the infrastructure?
Right.
Which are like really actually two very different questions at both ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. So when you look at and I touched on it this morning, this notion that software is eating the world, and it's true, right? So when we look at the services that are being created today and really published to end users and to consumers, everything is based in software. Now, what we don't typically talk about a lot is this infrastructure that's underneath that's powering it. And there's this notion of abstraction. You shouldn't care. You use cloud and hardware shouldn't matter. But the reality is that for companies and developers that are developing these intelligent services that are doing really in-depth analytics, really in-depth processing, hardware matters more so than ever.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is people at the very top, like Facebook, are investing gigantic amount of money to innovate at the hardware level, so they control the quality of service and they do the hosting themselves.
Yes.
Because they care about the perceived performance at the end user level.
Absolutely.
And so it's sort of coming back full circle.
It is, it really is. And when we look at the startup company I mentioned, Alien, they have developed their solution. They've leveraged other public virtual clouds. From a SoftLayer standpoint, they love our bare metal servers, but they also put 4 GPUs per server. So they have a bare metal server they've custom configured. They put 4 GPUs in there just to handle the load of really to increase the processing capabilities of their software. And having direct access to that type of hardware has made them more efficient as a company and ultimately delivers a better service to the end users. And we're seeing more and more of that, where processor matters, storage matters, GPUs matter. And so it really is coming back now where technically savvy companies building these services, they care about the underlying hardware, which 2 years ago wasn't as much as we see it today. So it's definitely starting to flip back to where it's both.
And that points back to your point about transparency at the infrastructure layer, so that you let the application guys see and control what's happening at the hardware level.
Absolutely, it's about choice.
Which is actually the opposite than encapsulation.
Yes.
and hierarchy of abstraction.
Yeah, it's hard to have pre-built, pre-packaged solutions that are going to meet the needs of everybody's workloads, right? So I can provide the utility, I can provide the plumbing in terms of compute, network, and storage, but I don't necessarily know your workload. But I want to make sure that I have options available for you to not only bring your workload to my platform, but to optimize specifically for your platform. I think Megan touched on it a little bit with Mongo, but like 2 years ago, we worked directly with Mongo to optimize MongoDB installations on our servers, taking advantage of our capabilities, and ultimately what we produce is a platform that is more performant on a dollar per transaction basis. That's what customers look for today. It's not just about just moving workloads, it's about how do I optimize, how do I become more efficient.
So that's your tool against Amazon.
It is. It's that choice and customization from a bare metal standpoint, and then we have a global private network. And when we have large global companies or even individuals that are addressing the world, that matters to them. Location matters, choice matters, and that's really where we play.
Yeah, which irony is also related to the legal
Absolutely.
aspect, because
More choice
you
for our
want to
customers.
know where the data is going to be stored, because different regulation. Let's move up the stack. How much of the software and at the end application is going to evolve into infrastructure player like you? How much do you push? we were talking earlier about, do you push the Internet of Things, management of Internet of Things, your ability to connect to various stuff, and then control the flow of information across vendor? Is this something where you're going, how much are you going to move up the stack? What's your strategy?
That's a great question. From my standpoint, I focus on SoftLayer, which is pure play infrastructure. But when I step back and I look at IBM Cloud, which is really a comprehensive, broad portfolio, that covers everything from SoftLayer infrastructure as a service all the way up through what we traditionally call as PaaS and SaaS, now extending to solutions, and solutions like IoT, solutions like big data and analytics that make it easier for consumers to take advantage of. And so we're seeing more and more of that happen. And I think that from my standpoint, I don't see a lot of it going down to the pure play IaaS layer, but kind of going back to my point to say that it's really breaking down the walls between what traditionally has been IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. There's this notion of the blurring of the lines between these, and it really is becoming this broader cloud ecosystem of services. And I think that's this evolution that we're seeing now are services, and these services are becoming part of what we traditionally looked at as cloud. And because they're API driven, they're on demand, you pay by the drink typically, usage based, all the tenets of cloud, but now you're applying it to services as opposed to just raw infrastructure. And to me, that is the evolution of software and solutions, is you're bringing it down closer to infrastructure by making it API accessible or service accessible.
So who do you compete against except Amazon? That's a serious
the big players,
competitor.
AWS, Microsoft, Google.
Okay.
Are the typical ones that we see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience or from our online system, which we're not using because it's too complicated? One last question before we break for lunch. What's keeping you awake at night?
The pace of innovation. I think when you look at how quickly our space is evolving, and it's not just from a competitive standpoint, but it's from a customer or consumer standpoint, the demands that companies are placing on our platform and every platform is increasing really on a day-by-day basis.
So you've lived pre-IBM acquisition, post-IBM acquisition. How tightly are you integrated into the IBM hypermatrix, and how much is that slowing you down? That's off the record, obviously.
Oh yeah, off the record here. No, it's actually gone really well. I went through a lot of acquisitions back in the original .com days, and I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of what acquisitions look like, both as the acquiree and the acquirer. This one was one where I think a lot of us went into it, not quite sure how it was going to play out given the size of it, but IBM actually did a fantastic job of acquiring SoftLayer and letting us continue to be who we are from a culture standpoint, from a product and service standpoint, and let us do what we've done best. And they enabled us to do even more by funding us. So we had $1.2 billion global expansion that grew our footprint from 12 data centers now to 27 data centers. So from that standpoint, it's gone really well. And now there's a lot of activity talking about IBM Cloud. Right? It's not just about SoftLayer, just about Bluemix. It's an entire portfolio that we're bringing together.
And so, for example, do you interact with the Watson guys to understand how this knowledge capturing could be applied to the low level of infrastructure?
Not to that degree. We work with them directly as almost as an internal customer, if you will.
So it's obviously, I assume it's Watson on the top of your layer.
Yes. And we work with pretty much, I would say every IBM team, but lots of IBM teams, because SoftLayer is not just the go-to-market infrastructure platform for IBM, it is the cloud platform for all of IBM. So you look at Bluemix, our PaaS, it runs on SoftLayer. Cloudant, our document-oriented database, runs on SoftLayer. And IBM has well over 100 SaaS properties, all being moved on to SoftLayer itself. So we work with all of these teams, which gives us tremendous insights, because it's not just about our customer base or our enterprises, but now we have internal customers that are serving their customers. And so it really broadens our scope and our capabilities as we evolve our platform.
Okay. Marc, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lunchtime.